Welcome, welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. This is what we talk about every single week. Those things that are going to help us craft this life that we want. Sometimes we get caught up in places that necessarily we don't want, but we don't know necessarily how to move out of those places. And that's the guest that I have today. I have Dr. Reggie Thomas with me today that's going to talk to us a little bit about burnout. I mean, well, can I just say, Dr. Thomas, I have so many questions for you. Like, how do I recognize burnout? How do I get out of it? What do I do for this? Is there life after burnout? I mean, so let's just start. Welcome, Dr. Thomas, and thank you for being on the show.
Hi, Mary. Thank you for having me. It's good to be with you. I'm looking forward to this conversation because it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. I'm very passionate about this, so looking forward to engaging with you in this.
Well, let's start with something that you asked me because I was asking you prior to us starting this morning. Tell me what you did before you're doing this, because every single person, without exception of the 400 guests that I've had on here, did not start out where they have ended up. And so let's tell my listeners a little bit about your history, where you were and how you ended up being the professional who's going to give them the what's up on burnout.
Okay. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version, Mary.
Okay.
So, I grew up in West Tennessee and went to Union University, which is a small private college. I was a communications major there. I've always enjoyed, speaking and inspiring people, but I never dreamed that I would end up doing it professionally. And then I got my master's in Fort Worth, Texas at Southwestern Seminary, got a theology degree. And then 20 years later, I went back and got my doctorate in leadership. And so
Ah,
I spent 30 years in faith-based nonprofit organizations as a senior leader. And so I'll give you just the sketch of it, and then you can ask anything you want to ask about it. But 5 years ago, I went through burnout, pretty extreme. I think it was just years of
ah.
serving and experiencing emotional and physical exhaustion, but I never really slowed down to really pay attention to it and to deal with it. I finally just hit the wall. And at the time, I was a business executive on a large megachurch staff. And I asked the board of directors for a leave of absence. They granted that. They gave me 10 weeks without pay, which was fine.
10 weeks
And when it,
without pay. Okay, that sounds fun.
yeah, yeah, it was fine. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in your mid-50s, I'm sorry.
Exactly, yeah. But I felt like that, the time off was needed to recover from burnout, and so I took the 10 weeks. When it was time for me to return to work, they terminated me. And so
Whoa.
yeah. First time in my life I'd been terminated. At the time, I was 56 years old, and as you well know, in your 50s, you are in that decade that, people call the unhirables. It's a very difficult age to find a new job in your 50s, especially in your late 50s. So, Mary, I was here thinking, okay, do I pursue another role in my career or do I explore something else? And I'd always had this dream and
Mm.
passion and vision of starting my own company, working for myself. I told you before we started the broadcast that I've always had an affair with business. Uh, Business always intrigued me. I've always read business books, leadership books. And so I thought, okay, maybe this is my jumping point. And I believe everything happens for a reason. Yes,
I
after
believe that
terminating,
as well. So we're on the
yes,
same page there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I went through the typical emotions that most people go through when they're terminated without
Yeah.
cause. I mean, I was a good employee. I served well. I was respected. I was liked. Um, and, and I wasn't given a good reason as to why I was terminated. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the leadership at this church just didn't understand burnout, what it is, and why people go through it. They
So
probably embraced some of the stigmas. So,
can I ask, stop and ask a question right there? Because a lot of my listeners are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. A lot of them are career people who have gone through this whole thing. They are totally relating to what
Mhm,
you're saying. But the question that came to me when you said, you go through all those questions when you're terminated. That's what I want you to answer for me first is what were those questions that you asked yourself when you were terminated? Because we all assign certain labels to ourselves
mhm.
when we go through a termination process. So what were those?
Well, first of all, Mary, you have to deal with your emotions, and I would be dishonest if I did not tell you that I experienced all the different emotions that you go through. I experience anger. I experience disappointment. I experience sadness. I experience
Yeah.
depression. I experience stress. I experience fear.
Yeah.
And it was the fear that drove me to move into some reflective questions. See, I believe you have to process your emotions before you can process logically. And
Yeah.
that's when I began to ask the questions. Number one, what are my true gifts and talents, skills? Number two, what are my passions? Number three, what is it that I want to do for the rest of my life? And number four, how can I make the biggest impact and the biggest difference in the world? How can I do that? I came to the
Wow.
decision,
Those are some big questions.
big questions,
Huge.
and the answers did not come overnight. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a process of going through those questions. And it was really a great time of rediscovery, you know. Mary, over the years, you get comfortable in life. And I believe that reinvention, and that's exactly what I've done. I've kind of reinvented my life. And reinvention to me is not becoming who you're supposed to be. I think it is a part of that. I think it's also unbecoming who you're not. And so
Yeah.
I identified some things in me that I'd never surfaced before. And so that led me to a career
Yeah.
transition. And today I'm a professional speaker and loving it.
Wow. That is a beautiful journey. And I could spend a whole podcast on each of those questions that you asked yourself. The doubt, the fear, the wondering, have I I really not the person I thought I was? And then how to step through that. I would say that probably mm, maybe even as much as 80% of the people that reach out to me who watch this podcast who are in their 50s ask me this very same question. Is this all there is to life? Is
Mhm.
this what I was meant to do? Do I just keep hanging on? What would be next for me? And how do I go about discovering it? So, Reggie, share with us what you see as some of those steps as you began to rediscover the gifts and the talents that were innately yours, God given yours, and how you were going to use them. What are the steps?
I think the first step for me was I'm a spiritual person, and so
Mm-hmm.
for me it was I spent a lot of time in prayer, spent a lot of time meditating, spent a lot of time doing some spiritual processing, and just getting in touch with the person God has created me to be.
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
over the years we lose some of that, Mary. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
as we even as we grow up, our parents, they try to shape us into what they want us to be. And then as you get into your adult years, you start to conform to what you think other people expect of
Uh,
you. And that's what I was talking about earlier. You start to build all these layers on you. And not only do people don't see who you really are, you forget who you really are because all you see are those layers that you've allowed to cover who you really are. And and so I think for me, it was a spiritual process of just going through, okay, who has God created me to be? And
uh,
then, I think it's relational. I had 2 aspects there. Number 1, I found myself a good coach who helped me to, process
yeah.
a lot of what I had been through, but also what I like about coaching, counseling, you work backward, because you have to uncover
Right.
some issues that you've got to work through. Coaching focuses forward. So I had a good executive coach who kind of helped me work through some of these questions and some of these feelings. And then I also had a support group around me. I had 5 guys, in those 10 weeks that I went through burnout or burnout recovery, my leave of absence. I had 5 guys that I checked in with every single day. Not every single one of them every day, but,
Mhm.
I would check in with maybe a couple of them, and they held me accountable. They supported me. But when I got to the end of my 10-week, they stayed engaged with me. And they knew then that probably where I was then was probably a lot more critical than the 10 weeks before, because now it's decision time. Because the board of directors that made a decision for me, they decided to terminate me
Yeah.
because I probably, Mary, did not have the courage. If they had said, Reggie, we want you to come back, I probably would have gone back to that position just out of safety and
Yeah.
out of fear. And
Yeah.
so the fact that they terminated me forced me to really process, okay, what's next for me? So these guys, they kind of led me through that whole process. And without, I never brought them all together, but I had a private conversation with each one of them, and independently of each other. This is going to give you cold shivers. Independent of each other, every single one of them told me, Reggie, you need to go out on your own. You need to start your business. That wasn't in a group setting. That was like
Right.
individual meetings with each one of them.
They saw
So,
something in you that you weren't sure was there.
yes,
What I
yes.
hear you saying is that you had to step out of what could have been a victim mindset. "Oh, poor me. Look what they've done to me after all these years I've dedicated to them, and why would they do this to me?" And all blah. But you stepped around that process. I mean, not that you didn't have probably a few days with that, but you
Yeah.
were able to step around that and say, "Okay, this is not happening to me. This is happening for me."
Ooh, I love that. I love that. And you're right. I mean, I did have the victim mentality for a while. Woe is me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the analogy that I give people as I share this experience, I always tell people for about 2 weeks, I was in the dumpster. The
Yeah.
emotional dumpster is what I call it. And in that emotional dumpster, that's where you feel sorry for yourself, you feel anger, you feel fearful. And as I was in that dark dumpster, Mary, I remembered what a wise old man told me one time, when I was going through another dark time earlier in my life. He said, Reggie, if you stay in that dumpster too long, you're going to start smelling like the dumpster.
That's a
And
great
so
analogy.
I thought, I don't want the rest of my life to be living as a bitter old man or a pitiful old man. I
Yeah.
want to snap out of this. So that memory of that one statement helped me to get out of the dumpster. But yeah, you're right. Don't be impressed. I did have that
Yeah.
mindset, that victim mindset at first.
And then you chose something different. Your life
Yes,
wasn't gonna be garbage. In fact, when you saw that, you probably leaped out of that
absolutely.
position and like, "Okay, okay, shake it off, and let's go." How do people recognize or know that they are in burnout? Because some people, like, there were many times in my career, it was just like, put your head down, put your nose on the grindstone and move forward. I don't care if your nose is bloody or not. You just stick with this. How do people recognize that they are experiencing burnout?
So in my book, Burnout Pains, I have a full chapter on that, and there are what I call um, there are internal causes and there are external causes, and there are
Mm,
symptoms. There are symptoms. So let me just share with you what my symptoms were,
yeah.
and we can talk about others if you want to. So um, there are what I call um, the physical symptoms. There are emotional symptoms, and there are behavioral symptoms.
Yeah.
My physical symptom was insomnia. And if
Ah,
I can be really, really honest with you, Mary, I mean, I was in burnout 5 or 6 years ago, and I went through recovery. My circadian cycle is just now getting back on track. I mean, insomnia was my big, and it was due to anxiety. So
Right.
insomnia was my big physical symptom. My emotional
Mm.
symptom was just emotional exhaustion. I hated my job. Um, I knew that I was in burnout on Sunday night when I started thinking about going to work Monday morning. I was drained. I was depleted emotionally. I just didn't have anything else to give. And then my behavioral
Mm.
symptom, and this is going to freak you out. I'm a, I'm an off the chart extrovert.
Oh, really? Huh, wouldn't
Yeah.
have guessed. Who knew?
And I can see that in you too. Yeah. I can see that in you as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm an off the chart extrovert and I didn't want to be around people. And when that
Ah,
happened, I thought, "Oh my gosh, something is wrong. Something is off."
yeah.
Because I'm that guy who walks in a restaurant and I'm looking around going, "Oh, who do I know in here?"
Yeah, yeah,
And I go to networking meetings, I'm working the room. That's just who I am.
yeah.
But when I was in the throes of burnout, I just wanted to be by myself. I didn't have the
Mm.
energy. I think that's what it is. You're depleted, you're drained, and you just don't have the energy to give. And so I remember every day my home is about 2 miles from where I worked. And every day, rather than going to lunch with staff or going to lunch with other people, I'd get in my car, I'd drive home, and I would eat my lunch alone in my den
Ah,
every single day because I just didn't want to be around people. And I would sit there on my sofa watching television, watching the clock, going, "Oh my gosh, I got to go to work now. It's 15 minutes before I need to go back." And so, but those were my symptoms. And, but there are, like I said, physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, and behavioral symptoms.
and what I hear you saying is that your symptoms were something that was different than your norm.
Yes.
So if you're normally an extrovert, suddenly you want to be alone. If you're normally can't wait to get to work and start a new fresh week, and you're like, I have to get in the car and start driving. At least I have to get driving. At least I have. You're experiencing something different that
Hmm.
doesn't feel as good than you felt before.
Right. And one of the things that I try to do in all my keynote talks and my training around burnout is to encourage people to pay attention to it. Okay. So the reason I got into chronic burnout, Mary, is well, there's two reasons. Number one, I didn't recognize I was in burnout at first. I was probably in burnout a
Oh,
year before
yeah,
I
yeah.
recognized it. Didn't recognize it. And then the second phase is once I recognized it and owned it, I didn't acknowledge it to anybody because
Ah,
of the stigma. There's a lot of stigma around burnout uh, that
right.
that you're a failure, that you're weak, that you're sick, that you're
Interesting.
crazy. And working in a faith-based organization, that wouldn't have gone over well.
No, they
And
just told you to pray more.
yeah, exactly. And so for probably 6 months, I knew I was in burnout, but who do I talk to? Where's a safe
Yeah.
place to acknowledge this? If I acknowledge this, are people going to actually support me and resource me so that I can get better? So the first part of my burnout was really deceptive, and here's why. I didn't understand that burnout is different than just being physically fatigued. I mean, you do experience physical
Right.
fatigue in burnout. Burnout, the classic definition of burnout is emotional exhaustion and emotional
Mm,
depletion. So when I first went through
yeah.
burnout, I thought, oh, just a vacation will make me feel better. So my wife and I, we took our first international trip together back in 2018. We went to Italy. Loved it. I love Italy.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
That's a anti-burnout place.
exactly. So went there, had a great time with my wife. And in my past, when I would go on vacation tired, I would come back refreshed. Came back from Italy, Mary, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm still tired. I'm still dreading work. Something's wrong." So I went back to work. I didn't really pay attention to that. And a year late,
Mm,
well, actually, it was about 6 months later. We took another overseas trip. Same thing. Had a wonderful time while I was there. Unplugged from work. I had a great time with my wife. Enjoyed the food and all that good stuff. The sights. I came back. and same thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've
Mm.
been doing this for 25 years. At the time, it was 25 years. I always go on vacation and come back refreshed. And after taking 2 vacations and coming back still feeling these symptoms, I knew something was wrong. Okay. So, first of all, I was deceived in thinking that it was just fatigue versus uh, burnout.
Right.
That's when I recognized I was in burnout. At that point, though, I couldn't do anything about it, or at least I felt like I couldn't do anything about it because who's going to understand me? Who's going to accept me? Who's going to support me because of all these stigmas around burnout? So, what I tell people in my conferences and my talks on burnout, burnout is not a weakness, it's a warning sign. Um, it's not failure, it's feedback.
I love
Okay.
that.
Something's
Yeah.
wrong and you need to slow down and address it. So what I'm trying to encourage organizations. When I deal with burnout, I don't just deal with it from an individual basis. I deal with it organizationally as well. And I try to help leaders to understand that you've got to create safe spaces so that when your employees start to feel these signs and symptoms, you're going to create a safe place for them to talk about it, and you're going to resource them and you're going to support them in that battle.
I think in companies, that is such a critical tool to be able to recognize that in your employees. And if we don't, has everything to do with us and the
Yeah,
fear of, well, like, well, if I acknowledge this, then they might leave. Or
right.
if I acknowledge it, then everyone here is going to say they have burnout. I mean, there's so many fears why a leader in a company would not want to acknowledge it. But there are so many things on the plus side of acknowledgement. How do you see that as a beautiful place that leaders want to create for their employees and their staff?
Well, a lot of leaders are starting to get it
Mhm.
because self care is one of the preventative aspects of burnout, self
Right.
care. A lot of employees across industries, they don't pay attention to self care. I believe you've got to pay attention to all the domains of life. You've got to be balanced and healthy emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, vocationally, relationally, financially,
Absolutely.
and self care is so important.
Mhm.
My generation, our generation,
Well,
we
you're
were taught.
younger than I am, but okay, thanks for including me in that. I appreciate it.
Well, you look younger than me, okay?
Okay, no,
So
not hardly.
you look younger, so that makes you an honorary member of my
Okay.
generation. Um, so our generation, we were taught to just suck it up,
Yep.
to be loyal. But the millennial generation, which is now 50% of the job market, and the projections are by the year 2030, the job market is going to be composed of 90% millennials. Let me tell you,
Wow.
millennials will only work for a place where they can pay attention to self care and
Yeah.
where they are going to be cared for by their supervisors. Um, they don't stay at a place 20, 30 years because they're loyal to the company. They're going to
Right.
get what they need. And so I think organizational leaders are starting to get that. They see a new generation moving into the job market and they understand the mindset of millennials. So I think they're starting to get it. Part of my job is to teach them how to care for them and how to create a culture that's going to be conducive to well-being in the workplace.
I couldn't be happier about this because you're right. You're not a baby boomer though, still. You're not in,
I'm a cusper. I was born in
yeah,
1963. The baby boomer generation was from 1946 to 1964. So I'm just on the cusp.
you're in the cusp. I was born smack in the middle. I'm 1953. So
Really?
smack in the middle of that baby
Well,
boomer
well,
generation.
girl, you
And
look good. You look good.
but that was exactly what we were taught by our parents who went through the depression and the war was that the
Mhm.
way to get through life is to buckle down.
Yep.
And the way to get through life is just to suck it up. And you would never stop and think and even consider self-care. Well, that is like the Antichrist. That is the
Mhm.
worst possible thing that you could do, that you need to be on if you take time to care about anything, it's other people,
Right.
never yourself. And it took me a long time, Reggie, to realize that my own personal self-care was the basis for my to be able to care for others.
Yes.
And I think I was a great boss. In some regards, I was fun. I provided a great environment. I really cared about people. But because I wasn't taking self care for me, I
Mhm.
didn't allow that space for self care for them.
Right.
What do you mean you're not feeling well this morning? We need you. What are you talking about? It's just, I didn't miss a day of work in 35 years. I
Mhm.
wore that like a badge on my shoulder rather than saying, wow, I was completely unaware of my own personal needs. So I showed up no matter what it meant. No matter what was how I said it. I showed up no matter what. But what I should have added or could have added, I showed up no matter what the cost for me. And that's not what we want for our employees anymore.
Right.
That's not what we want for ourselves. So, this piece that you are bringing into the marketplace and into companies is so vastly needed. If you're a cusper or you're a baby boomer and you're overseeing these people, we've got to wake up because the millennials, you're absolutely right, have woken up and they realize what they need. And if we don't give them space for that, we're we're not going to be have the staff that we need. We're not going to have the relationships that we want. How do you go about training people to watch for this in others? Like, what are some of the cues that people give off in the workplace?
In the workplace. So, where I start is with my A players. You know, your A players are the high performers, the
Yep.
high producers, committed. And when you start to see a difference in their behavior, that is a sign. That is a
Mm,
sign. So as leaders, you have to be socially aware. I mean, I think emotional intelligence is the greatest
yep.
gift and trait a leader can possess.
Yeah.
Uh, you have to be self-aware, but you also have to be socially aware. I also think you have to know your employees, you know them personally, so that when they do start to go through this, rather than you observing it, they would tell you. But that doesn't always happen because they don't always feel psychologically safe. But you have to
Right.
be so in tune to who they are and their patterns. You pick it up and then you address it. I have an
Mm,
example of that. My last position, I had one of my direct reports. I started noticing this, and there was a really, really huge difference in his behavior, in his performance. At first, I addressed it the way most organizational leaders would. You know, you approach it from an HR perspective. You
sure.
know, you call them in and you write them up and you deal with it in performance evaluation. And I'm thinking something's off. Um, the HR stuff's not working, and he's too good of an employee to
Mm,
put on a PIP or to fire. There's something else going on. And so one day we got away from the office and I took him out to lunch and we just had a one-on-one conversation, and just that change of environment provided that psychological safety. And that's when
right.
he opened up to me where he was. There was just some emotional demoralization going on, some stuff at work, and he was going through burnout. And so we addressed that. There were some things that I gave him some time off, some other things that he needed, and he pulled through it and became that employee that I knew before he was going through this. And so that's just one personal story that I could
Right.
share to do that.
I it, the question it begs itself, and this I see as a dilemma in business and corporations today. We have all of these rules and regulations of how employers, HR people, the hiring staff are supposed to act, how we're supposed to interact with our fellow employees and our people who that we're the employer, they're the employee. And so sometimes we have hardened ourselves to like,
Mhm.
I can't ask that question. would get me in jail. I
Mhm.
can't express any personal compliments to people because that would be harassment. I have so we have
Yes.
this tape that goes in our head of be careful, blah, blah, you don't want to be sued, blah, blah. And so that tape sometimes keeps people from providing that safe place for people that where we say, so is there anything happening in your life that's creating these feelings for you? We are scared to death to ask that question. And because we're scared, they're scared to share it. How do we get past this point? Where do we begin to heal this?
So one of the things that I did, as a senior leader is I met every week. And that was pretty taxing, but I met every week with every single one of my direct reports. I think I had 8 in my last position, but I did a 30-minute meeting every week with them. And, I it was an organic conversation with a little bit of structure.
Hmm.
So I had 3 or 4 basic questions that I ask every week. And obviously the first 3 questions or so were work related, you've worked in the corporate world, what are you working on?
Yeah.
Uh, how are you doing on this project? Where do you need support? But the final question, and probably most HR people probably would not agree with this, but I thought it was high level enough where um, it allowed me to show them that I cared about them, but at the same time, they had the freedom to answer in any way
Mm,
that they wanted to. And that question was, how are you doing personally?
mm.
Now, you know, when I first, when you first start meeting with your staff, that question, they stay in the safe zone. But as you meet with them every week and they work with you and you begin to help them understand that you really care about them, not just as an employee, but as a person, they start to open up. So I have to tell you, in my last position, I was there 5 years, and I have to tell you, um, the last year or two, that I was supervising these 8 people, we had some really deep, hardcore personal conversations at the end of the meeting. They went from 30 minutes to an hour because,
Yeah.
it only takes
Quickly.
about 15, 20 minutes to go through the business stuff. But when you start to ask, "How you doing personally?" and they start to trust you and they know you care, man, they're gonna go down that
s-
road with you.
The
So,
floodgates are opened.
yes, yes. But that was what I did, Mary. That's what I did.
So I have found one of the most opening questions for me, and now I use it no matter what situation I'm in. If I'm in a social situation or a corporate situation or a family situation, anything. Mm. So many times the question is, in a casual situation, it's like, how you doing? That's the question.
Yeah.
And we've learned to say, oh, great, good, just fine. If they use the word okay, that is the red flag to continue down that road.
Yeah,
I'm okay. Yeah. Well, nobody wants to be just okay. But
exactly.
that's a common thing, like, how you doing? And so another question that was common is, what do you do? And so both those questions have to do with an action as
Mhm.
opposed to a be. And we have a tougher time asking that and staying in that safe place. So the question I've started asking is, tell me what you care about.
Ooh, I love it.
Now, that moves them out of what do I do? And it's not going to get you in trouble with the law.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
nothing that says don't ask what you care about. But it opens up the floodgates. Tell me what you care about. They might
Mhm.
share with you things professionally. They might share with you things personally that they're personally interested in. They might share with you things about their family. They might share with you things about the really world peace or the greater good of all mankind. It's their levels to open up onto
Right, they can take that wherever they want to, right?
wherever they want to, but it's not on me to direct the conversation from that point.
Exactly, exactly. What do you
Yeah,
care I like that, I like
yeah.
that.
Share
Yeah.
with me what you care about. And
Me personally? Yeah,
yeah, share with
yeah.
me what you care about.
Well, I care about my family. I care about my family deeply, you know?
Mm,
I care about legacy. 'Cause, in up until my 40s, it was all about success. You're building your career, you wanna be successful, and, I went through another time. It wasn't burnout, it was just a time of I guess, a time of reflection. You've got career success, you've got your family, you've got your kids, you've got the American dream. But I just remember my early 40s, I'm like, it wasn't like I woke up one day and all of a sudden it hit me. It was like a gradual thing. But I came to this realization, is there more to life than this?
Yeah.
Again, I brought in an executive coach to work with me on that, and we came up with a life plan. Came up with a life plan, and that changed my life. And then I realized that the reason I was asking questions like, "Is there more to life than this?" is I was chasing the wrong thing. I was chasing the wrong S. You know, I stopped chasing success and started chasing significance. And I can tell you I'd say from mid 40s to almost 62 next month. I know my gift's going to be in the mail next month. Okay, so I can expect that.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I've lived for significance, and it's so much more rewarding and so much more fulfilling.
Yes.
So, significance, I care about significance, influence, and impact.
I love that. Significance, influence, and impact.
Yes.
Surely in your public speaking, you probably feel you had the greatest fulfillment of those very issues. How does that translate to the very first thing you listed as what you care about, your family?
What it does is, number 1, on the basic level, it provides a good living for my family,
Yeah?
and number 2, my wife and my 2 daughters, I'm a girl dad, by the way, uh, they are so proud of me. They really are.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
love seeing their dad on stage. But it's also, I mean, this is what's amazing. I can say things on stage that impact them in ways that having those one-on-one conversations. Sometimes when you have kids, those one-on-one conversations, they may be, especially adult kids, which I have adult kids,
Mhm.
they may come across or they may perceive that as you being intrusive, um, or you're meddling.
Yeah.
Uh, and they can get a little defensive, but when they hear their dad on stage talking about real life issues, it's not like they're getting it, but he's talking about everybody else too. It's not just us. So I love that. But they're proud of their dad when he gets on stage. They really
I
are.
love that. I bet they are. And
Yeah.
one of the things you might give a try is one-on-one with every one of those significants in your family that you would just like them to share with you. What do you care about?
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. That's a
It
great
it shifts the conversation and you get to know people on a different level. I had no idea you cared about that. I had, oh, is that why you spend so much time doing this? Because that's what, and then the other thing, of course, you get to look at with not only employees, but yourself, particularly with yourself, is that are my actions now, what I
Mhm.
do, in alignment with what I care about? And it, particularly with children, it allows them a wonderful opportunity. Um, when I said to my children so many times in my career, you are the most important things to me, my actions were not reflecting that. So
Mm.
how could they believe that when mom
Right.
was gone every weekend, gone every night? And now they're in their 40s. And we spend a lot of one-on time. My one son said to me, I just used to hear you say that, and I would think, then what are you doing that's so much more important than me? Those are hard things to hear, Reggie.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then we have the opportunity to step into alignment. The very last thing before we close this, you said something early on I want to ask you about. So
Okay.
get ready. Okay. This is
All right. I'm
personal.
ready.
This is kind of
Um,
a personal thing. So here we go.
I don't care. You go
I know
there.
you're an open book. You're good. And I am too. So I mean, like here I'm admitting about how, my children are saying to me when I'm in my 70s, Mom, where were you when we were growing up? Ugh.
Yeah.
But regret. I will tell you, is the worst of the human emotions
Mm.
because we can do nothing about it. Regret
Right.
lives in the past. But if regret instantly moves you to a new action, to embracing a new truth, then it has a second's worth of value as you embrace that. So you said something early on as you were looking and trying to analyze and understand your burnout and why were you feeling these things and what was next to you. You said specifically, so I went to prayer and I went to meditation. I want to talk to you about those two issues
Okay.
because so many times we think of prayer and asking for help. I need help. I need help. Please help me under blah, blah, blah. But we fail to step into the second piece, which is the meditation, which is when we actually get quiet and listen. Share with me your thoughts on that.
I could not agree with you more, Mary. I think in order to make decisions and to get perspective, you have to get quiet. You have to get still. Okay. So no matter what your spiritual
Mm.
background is,
Right,
um, I think we're all spiritual beings
right.
and, whatever it is that you connect to spiritually, that's an individual thing. But I think it's in those moments that your heart talks to you. I think a part of the
Mm.
American culture is it's hustle, hustle, hustle. It's busy, 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 and we don't get quiet. And I think that is so important where you get alone and you empty your head of negative thoughts and you fill your head with positive thoughts. I think that's where the magic happens is when you can get quiet and get still. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I sense that in you, Reggie, that you have spent many hours in the quiet and the still listening. Even though, as we both have admitted, we're extroverts and we're out there, we're like in people's faces,
Hmm.
the growth is in those quiet, still moments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you've got to get still. And we don't do it enough. We don't do it enough. And But I try to do it every day. I try to get quiet every day in the midst of my busy schedule,
Yeah.
but I also have, longer intentional times, like I'll go to the beach for a half a day or, do something like that. I do these little mini personal retreats
Yeah.
where I journal, and by the way, in those quiet, still moments, I believe you need to journal because
Yes.
I think there are things that come to your heart, come to your mind, they hit you, and if you're not careful, you can lose them as you go back to the pace of life. But if you journal, it
Yes.
allows you to capture those insights that you get in those quiet, still moments. But not only that, what I have found is to me, journaling, I think you process more deeply when you write it down. I mean, yeah,
When
you can sit there in the quietness. And I tell people, don't use your cell phone, don't use your computer, be old fashioned. Again, this is where the
yeah.
baby coming out.
Yeah,
Be
yeah,
old
yeah,
fashioned
yeah.
fashion notebook and a pen and write it down because it takes longer to do it. And as you're writing, you're processing. People don't realize that. So I'm
Yeah.
a huge champion of journaling because it's a
Yeah.
part of processing.
I couldn't agree with you more. And when I'm going to give a speech, a public speech, I write it. I actually write it, the whole
Hmm.
thing. And the learning from doing the kinetic writing, I don't have to pick up my notes when I speak because I
Yeah,
have learned it inside and in my brain and in my heart. So you're absolutely right. The process of writing is so important to us now.
yeah,
And we have lost so much of that. Yeah, with our tech
absolutely.
world. Thank you for mentioning that.
I really appreciate what you just said. They teach us in the public speaking space. You don't memorize your talk, you know your talk.
Yeah.
And you're right. When you write it out, you're not writing it out so you can take it up on stage and read it word for
No,
word.
never.
It's to help you to get it ingrained in your heart and mind, you know. And but I love what you just said. That's awesome.
Yeah. Dr. Thomas, you are a breath of fresh air to people who are starting to walk down this road of burnout. And it doesn't matter if you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s. We all have those moments, those wake up calls that say, wow, I used to love this job. I used to love doing yoga, and now I hate going every day. So, recognizing those points when we're at burnout, you have a great book out, and we're going to include the link at the end of the podcast so people can find it on Amazon. Tell me just briefly about your book.
So, wrote the book last year, and in the book, I tell my story. But as I'm telling my story, I'm teaching about burnout. It's
Ah,
very easy. It's 140 pages, so it's easy. You can sit down and read it in a day or two. But in the introduction, I just tell my full story. I just put it out there. Hey, I went through it. Because number one, I want people to know I'm not just writing about something conceptually. I've personally been through it, and I think that connects with people. And that's what I want to do when I
yeah,
speak and write. I want to connect with people. I want to do more
absolutely.
than just teach you stuff. I want to connect with you. But the second thing is I want people to understand that um I want people to understand that um there are safe places, and I want to help them create
Mhm.
safe places. I want them to acknowledge it. But I think the most important thing is I want to give people hope. I mean, I was at chronic burnout, and some people burn up. When they go through burnout at the level that I went through it, their life becomes a mess. I recovered and healed. And on the other side of burnout, my life is a lot more rewarding and fulfilling. So when people read my book, I don't want them to jump from the introduction to the last chapter because that's where I talk about my journey since. But I want them to know, hey, there's hope. If Reggie Thomas can get through this and come out on the other side more passionate, more energetic, more fulfilled than ever, I can do this too. But in between those two chapters,
Mm.
I give a lot of stuff, a lot of resources, a lot of tools about how you get there. And so, no, I'm excited about it. I really am excited about it. And here's
Oh,
what
I
it
was
looks
just going to ask you if you had a copy of it.
yeah, here's what it looks
Burnout
like.
Pains. There we go.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
available on Amazon. Yeah.
so we'll include that. We'll also include the website, so how people can find you and your company, and probably your LinkedIn profile as
Yeah.
well. If you'll send me all of those things in an email, I can make sure they get on the end of this process. And
Okay.
we've just had the most delightful talk. I think that you know how I can see why you're a very successful speaker, because you do what I do, and this is exactly the flip of what coaches will tell you. You know how coaches tell you that don't be nervous when you get on stage, just picture everybody naked. Now, we've all heard that. We've all heard that. But what my goal is when I get on stage, is I want my entire audience to see me as naked, to see me
Yeah.
being willing to stand there, not hiding, not covering, but that I am naked with all my foibles, with all my struggles, with all my joys, with all my successes. And when they see you naked, then you can touch them.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You know, uh, the reason I like that, I think what connects with people is authenticity. They just want you to be
Exactly.
real. They want you to be honest. And I used to, back in my earlier days, I focused on professionalism. Um, People don't want you to, they don't want you to be professional. They want you to be real. I mean, you and I are just naturally professional because of what we do.
Yeah.
You don't have to work at if you're a professional, you're professional, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to work at it. Just be real and be authentic. But the thing that keeps me from being nervous on stage, and it's really connected to what you just said, I make it about them, not about me. When you try to
Yes.
be professional, when you go up on stage and you want to be perfect and you want to give the perfect talk and you want the perfect transitions and you want the perfect stories, it's about
And the
you.
perfect score at the end when they fill out
Yeah,
their survey sheet.
right. That's why you get nervous. But when it's about the people that you're speaking to,
Yes.
um, it's it's freeing because you're there to connect and you're there to inspire and you're there to encourage. You're not there to impress them. So I think we get nervous when we try to impress, but if your goal is to inspire, there's freedom there. So
Bingo. Right? That's the key. You are a gift.
you are too. I'm so glad we connected. I'm glad we
Oh,
connected on LinkedIn, and I'm glad you invited me on your. I love this. I get energized by just,
so
there's so
here's
much energy. Yeah.
here is a nugget that you can take away, a feather for your hat. In my 400 podcasts, you're the only person who I did not know in advance that I asked to be on my podcast.
Oh wow, that's an honor.
I have had many people reach out to me. Probably half of my people reach out to me. The other half are people that I know that I reach out to them and say, "Hey, we want to be my podcast." Yeah, Mary, let's do that. You're the only one that I reached out to that I didn't already know.
Wow, thank you so much. What an honor. Well, I feel like I have a friend for life. I hope we'll stay connected. I want to stay connected.
Yeah, I want to come hear
Love.
you talk.
Well, now where are you from, by the way? Where do you live?
Born and raised in Iowa.
Okay.
Moved out west to Utah to go to school. I stayed here ever since. Yeah, I've been in Utah now for 52,
Where?
53 years. Salt Lake
Here.
City, Salt Lake City.
Oh my gosh, I was just there the last week.
What
If I had known, yeah, I
up?
was in
Yeah.
Sandy. I spoke at a CIO conference there in Salt Lake City. Well, it was in Sandy, but I was there Thursday and Friday. I
Oh
was
my
there.
goodness.
I flew in Thursday afternoon and I had all Friday morning free and I spoke Friday afternoon and flew home Friday night. We could have connected.
Well,
Oh my
now
gosh.
we know we'll never do that again.
Wow.
I am your best friend in Salt Lake City.
Oh yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yeah. Yeah. I had all this time Friday morning. I was prepping.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had time. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I had no idea.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go. All right, my friend, we will connect again, and perhaps someday, because of the synergy we feel, we and the universe will create an opportunity for us to share the stage together.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that.
That would
I
be
would love.
amazing, right?
Well,
All
thank you for
right.
having me on your show and your podcast, and this was so energizing.
All
This
right,
is gonna
my
be the
listeners.
this
Yeah.
is gonna be the best part of my day. Yeah.
Was mine as well. Even though it's my birthday, I think this could be the best part. So this could be the best birthday gift. My listeners, I know you can see why I reached out to Dr. Thomas and why I want him to be on here. So many of my listeners, you are in this part of your life where you're questioning what's next. Is this all there is to life? And I encourage you to follow him on LinkedIn, to buy his book, to step into what's next in my life. And how do I live that very best life? And how do I craft it so it's the most meaningful possible? Thank you so much for being here.
Crafting a Meaningful Life.